So NAN just dropped a huge new update, and this is going to be native data tables. Essentially, what this allows you to do is store data directly in NAN, and you don't have to rely on another service, right? Typically, when we're going to be building out type of workflows, people are going to send data into Google Sheets, they're going to send data into Airtable or Supabase. Right. And you're going to be reading rows and then building out your workflows associated with it. But now NAN allows you to store data directly as a data table in their service, which is really awesome. Now, some people online are saying, this has made Google Sheets pointless or made Supabase pointless. I disagree with that sentiment. But what I do want to show you guys today are some of the different use cases associated with it. We're going to go well over 10 different examples today. I'm going to take you step by step on creating your first table in NAN. We're going to go through a bunch of different workflows, the nodes, the tools, how you can set it up with AI agents, as well as an MCP server, and then also talk about error handling with it. I think there is a ton of use cases. And again, this is an amazing feature. But I want to give you like the realistic approach on how you could utilize this in your day-to-day efforts in NAN. So this video is going to be a bit longer. I want to say it's going to be like 40 to 50 minutes long, but I plan on teaching you guys a ton. And yeah, if you have other use cases, let me know down below in the comment section. This just came out. I'm recording this a day or two after the beta release. So I'm sure there's going to be more things that the community thinks of over time, and would love to hear your feedback on that. All right, and last thing, before we jump into the native data tables, if you need any help building out any NAN workflows for your business, I am taking on freelance customers. You can get in contact with me down below in the description. All right, guys, this is what we're gonna be learning today with data tables. Well, hold on a second. Let me zoom out. We're gonna be covering everything that you guys see on here, in addition to this first example, which is just gonna be setting up tables and different things like that in this lesson. Tons and tons to cover. I'm recording this as of September 23rd. Technically, these were launched on the 22nd, but NAN team rolled that back. So I didn't update my NAN instance fast enough to get the table update. So I actually just got it here this morning. Although I did see there was a few YouTube videos out yesterday associated with these. And I don't know like necessarily if some other creators got access to this a little bit early or not, but I wish I did have access to stuff earlier. So I kind of built this out, thinking about it yesterday, and built out this tutorial today based around kind of the core concepts and ideas that I'm thinking about using native data tables. Now a little backstory as well. My full-time job is a data scientist. I worked initially as a data analyst, so I do work with a lot of tables on a daily basis. So yeah, that's kind of just some of the background on this side of things. First thing you're going to do though, is you're going to update your NAN. So let me just go save over here, and what I'll show you on that side of things, just go to your admin panel. And of course it's going to take me out over here. What you're going to do is go into your settings, and then your NAN version, you want to get on 1.113.1 or later, right? You can see this is the latest beta version. So make sure you choose that and update it. It's going to refresh everything. Otherwise, you're not going to have access to it. I'm going to see a comment down below and say, hey, I can't find this. Well, make sure you're on the correct NAN version, because again, they just technically rolled it out here this morning. And I do expect a lot of other changes to apply here in the future, right? So before we even build out our first table and things like that, I do want to give you guys a few other additional thoughts and ideas, right? So like, what are the benefits of using native data tables, right? The first one is NAN states that they're faster than querying external tables. Now, I'm not a benchmark channel, right? There's some channels out there that are going to benchmark everything and show you that side of things. Are they faster or not? I guess time will tell, right? So there's some scenarios and things like that. This is day one of the technology here in NAN. Things are going to improve over time. So I'm not too concerned on benchmarking it. And additionally, like one of the benefits for sure is you can store your data natively. So it's one less API call. So you don't have to call into Google Sheets or Airtable or Supabase or wherever you're storing your data, right? Because now you can technically store it in here. The thing about it though, as well, is, the data is stored in NAN, right? You can't just grab it from Google Sheets. You can't just grab it from Airtable. There is some drawbacks on that side of things. So what we're going to cover today is like grabbing data from Google Sheets and then also repopulating data in Google Sheets. I think that is a good way to do it, right? So like maybe you have Google Sheets, you bring in data over here to NAN, you work on your data, and then later on, like you update that Google Sheets table. And maybe you set that up as a trigger or something like that. Again, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But just note that your data is going to be stored in here, right? So if you need access to Sheets to do other calculations based off of your data or whatever else, you're kind of stuck, right? Unless you want to send out the data again. Next is your 50 millibytes of storage limit, right? So based off of some comments on this, it looks like it's a 500,000 rows of a simple contacts table. So there's a lot that you could do on here with the storage. Also, just reading some comments online, this is a feature a lot of people wanted since Make has it. Make is technically a competitor to NAN. I personally haven't used Make. I like using NAN, but that is out there. And again, this is very similar to like using a spreadsheet of some sorts. You can ignore this title section over here. I was brainstorming some titles for the video. Technically, I don't think this is true, but that does get clicks. So what we're going to do on this side of things is go into our first example, right? So I showed you guys how you could update NAN already, right? So next, like, where is this data stored at? So how you can find this, if you go over here and go into personal, you have 4 tabs now, right? In the past, it used to be just workflows, executions, and credentials, right? These 3 over here, which I don't know why I said them out of order. But you now have data tables over here on this side of things. And you can see these are just some tables that I was playing with today, but this is where they're going to be stored at. And there's a few different ways that you could create a table. So if you go over here to where it says create workflow, if you go down over here, you can see it says create data table. The other way that I found you could do these, let's go into a data table node, which we'll cover this here in a second. But if you go over here and you go to from list, you can actually create a new data table. You can see this right over here and it'll take you over there. So, 2 approaches on how you would like to create a data table, right? And again, we're going to cover this here in a second. Okay. So next side of things is the default columns and different things like that. All right. So we're going to create a new table and we're going to jump into it. So I'm going to keep it easy. We're going to go over here and create a data table. Let's just name this NAN live tutorial. So live tutorial. And jump right into it. Okay, so a few notes on this side of things. First, there is 3 automatic things that are populated, right? You have this ID over here, you have this created at, and then you also have your updated at, right? So this ID over here is essentially a unique identifier, right? Now in real databases, there's not always going to be specifically the ID as the unique identifier, right? But in NAN, this makes it really easy over here. Created at is when your row is going to be created at, and updated at is like when the last time your row has been updated, right? So what you'll notice, if I just click plus over here, we automatically start with ID 1, right? This was created at this timestamp over here, which is essentially 8:27 at night. Yes, I'm making NAN video before I go to bed, and then updated at over here. And again, like let's say I want to add in a new column over here, we can do that, and we'll cover here in a second. But you can see also if I go over here, add row, right? Add row, add row. And what's kind of interesting too, I go over here, let's say I want to delete all of these. So deletes, okay. And then I want to go over here to add a new row, right? We're back over. Cool. So we have that on that side of things. Great. Okay. So now we're going to talk about, creating brand new columns. And again, there's a few different ways that you could do this, right? And same with row, you could add in a row over here, or you can just click plus. I find it easier just to click this plus over here. Column, you can click this for add column, or you can go over here into add column. So let's just add in a column on this side of things, and let's do a string, right? Now there's different data types that you could populate over here. You could populate a string, right? Which is text, number, right? Which is something like 20, 30, 40, right? Boolean, true or false, and then date time, which you can see created at and updated at are there. So let's just say like we have, running races. We're going to do some example about races and stuff like that with running. So let's just call this running races. Okay. And one thing you'll note is I have an underscore on here. There's like a few different ways for naming conventions on how to do one in your database, right? You don't want to have something like this, and you can see it says invalid column name. So when there's like two words, right, there's two approaches. You can usually have an underscore over here. Another one, which you can see that any end team is utilizing, is you have your first word in lowercase, and then you just go over here. It works. Me personally, I always just put underscore, right, and keep everything lowercase. That's just how I like on my naming conventions, but it's super important. Another thing to note too is you can't start a column name with a number. So if I go over here and say like 2 running races, invalid column name, right? And it says column names must begin with a letter. It can only include letters, numbers, or underscores, right? But you can say running races and just do 2 here at the very end. And again, what I kind of recommend is follow a naming convention, right? Have a column make sense. Just don't name it column 1, right? So we're going to do a string example. So I'm going to go over here and add in this column, and then you can see this populates over here. Now, necessarily what a null value is, this is a value that just does not exist, right? So these are all null values because we have 3 rows and we just created a brand new column. So let's fill these out. I can just go over here and double click. Let's say we're doing a 50K, right? Which is like 31 miles. So that's over here. Let's say we do a 50 miler, right? 50M, not 50 meters, like a lot of people would probably assume. And you have this over here. And let's say you're going to do a 100 miler, right? These are ultra marathons. But you have this over here. Boom. You have the running races on this side of things because it's a string, right? Now, if I wanted to specifically put this in miles, right? Maybe when I do an integer, right? Which would be under number. And we say like, I don't know, total miles. So we'll say something like total miles. And again, you'll see this is populated over here on this side of things, right? And then 50K again is 31 miles. This is 50 miles, and then this is 100 miles, right? So now we have an integer over here, which this can be an integer or float, right? Based off the number, then you have that. Okay, and then like a Boolean, again, this is like true or false. So you can just put over here, ran race. I guess we'll go there, something like that. Okay, did I run these races? And technically I ran all these, right? So you can see that these are all check marks, which I honestly thought initially, I was just going to have to put in true or false, but it is interesting, the check marks. I find it kind of easy, right? So nothing over there, check mark or nothing, right? So this would be your false. This is your true. I kind of like that, right? And then lastly, right, we have over here on this side of things, your date time, right? And then you can say like last time ran, all right? Add in a column. You know, last time I ran a 100 miler was last November. I couldn't tell you the exact date. Let's see. Was it the 2nd or the 9th? I don't know. We'll just say it's the 2nd, right? I ran a 50 miler earlier that year. That was in like January. I haven't actually ran an ultra this year, which is interesting. But I don't know. Was this January, February? I can't remember. Let's say it was February 24th for 50 miler and 50K. I ran one during the summer last year. So we'll go, I don't know, it was like July 20th. We're going to put that as the date, or 13th. I don't know. I always do a summer ultra, but apparently not this year. But either way, right, those are your examples over here of your different data types, right? So we have our string on this side of things, right? We have our number, which I just put as an integer over here. But again, you could use a float. And the difference between integer and float, you have decimal at the very end. You have your Boolean on here, like I ran all these races. And then you have your last time ran, right? And I also show you how you can delete, right? You can go delete over here. It deletes your row in general. You can also clear the row. So you can just go over here, and if you want to clear your selection, backspace. So going over here, backspace, backspace, backspace. Well, that didn't work necessarily for last time I ran. Click this X. I guess that doesn't work either. All right, you just have to hold down the backspace on all those, and then it becomes null on that side of things. So again, that's just kind of the notes on here. Right, so I created an updated on here. ID is the unique identifier. Number is that ingestion over here, right? Show you how to create a table. I also showed you how to update a table. And again, if you just go back to data tables, you can see all the different tables that are present in over here. We have a lot to cover. We're already like well past 10 minutes into this video. So we can talk a lot more about this side of things. But I feel like we need to jump into some of the stuff that's going on over here. Okay, so the 4 that you're going to use the most, and these are the nodes, and let me zoom out here a little bit for you guys. So these are the 4 nodes you're going to use the most, right? You're going to insert a new row. You could also delete a row. You could update a row, or you could get rows. And I know there's more on here. You know, there's other things that I think that would be applicable here at the very end, which I could see this being updated. We'll talk about that at the very end of the video, but these are going to be the 4 that you guys are probably going to utilize the most. How you get over here, you just click this plus icon, you go over here to data, and you can see it says data table. We have the beta over here. It says permanently save data across workflow executions in a table. Awesome. So we're going to use that. We're also using this manual trigger on here. I always find this like the easiest. So just go over here to manual trigger. You only can have 1 per workflow. So we have this over here. The table we're going to start with in this video is, I want to say I have this concerts table. So what we're going to do is just fill out 1 row right now. So we're going to just click this plus icon over here. We're going to put in 9 Inch Nails because I just saw them, right? And then we're going to put date scene. Just go over here and we're going to choose the 10th. I think that's when I saw them. All right. And created that and updated that. Again, very, very basic table for this video. But the point is to learn the concepts on it, right? Real world applications tend to be a lot more complicated than YouTube videos. And, you know, granted, these are very beginner friendly, right? So take what's taught in the videos, expand it out elsewhere. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to insert in a row. So all I'm going to do is just drag this over here and we're going to set this up. So we say resource over here and we have row, right? That's the only option. In the future, maybe we can do some cool things with columns. Again, we'll talk about this here at the very end. We're going to choose operation insert, right? Data table, we're going to choose from list. So what I'm going to do is go into this concerts one. So just click this over here. And then we have mapping column mode. You know, there's a few different modes you can map automatically. Personally, I prefer just to map each column manually, right? And then we're going to add in values to insert, right? So what I want to do over here is add in the smile, which is a side project of Radiohead. And I saw them on 6/20/23. So what I do is I go over here, I go the smile and then date scene. And this is all the way back in 2023. We go back to June and that was 6/20/2023. Okay. And now I'm just going to click execute step. All right. It says node executed successfully. So let's see what's going on. So we're going to go back into our data table over here. Right, and we expect to have a brand new row. So what I'm going to do is just refresh this on here, and we're going to see if it was added or not. For some reason, it was not added. So we're going to just refresh this again. So we inserted it. It has ID of 2, so maybe it just glitched. And now you can see it. And I'm not sure why it didn't run that first time. Again, it's in beta, so there's some possibilities that not everything is working out of the box right now. But you can see band, the smile, and then also the date scene associated with it. Awesome. So now what we have on here is an option to delete rows. So what we're going to do really quick is we're going to create a brand new row of Radiohead. Now, I've never seen Radiohead, but they are playing concerts later this year. Now I can't make it over to Europe for that, but I'm going to go over here and say Radiohead and, you know, maybe I want to go check them out. So they are playing in the UK on 11/21/25. So what we're going to do is go over here, 11/21. Okay. That's in the future, right? For this concert. So now what we're going to do is we're going to delete that row. So again, just go over here, row operation delete, choose the table that you want to work on. That accidentally opened up in the new tab, but which I should show you guys. If you click this right over here, too far over here, opens up the table. I've done that like already 4 times today. So we have concerts there. Must match. Again, you have multiple things, any condition or all conditions. So what I'm going to just do is all conditions. When you're deleting, I would recommend, making sure this is 100% correct, right? How you want to do this. I'm going to do all conditions. What we're going to do on here is for our column, we're going to go over here to band, and then we're going to say equals, and then we're going to go over here to Radiohead, right? Then what we're going to do is just execute step, and then it says node executed successfully. It has the ID 3 Radiohead. So now I'm curious if it's been deleted or not. So obviously it's still here. I'm going to refresh this. And now it is gone, right? So we have only 9-inch nails and the smile. Awesome. So that's the first two. Next, we have our update row. So what we're going to do is go over here and change the value. Now, abbreviation that is used quite a bit for 9-inch nails is NIN, right? So we're using row. We're doing update this time. Again, our concerts must match all conditions. Band equals. We're going to go over here into 9-inch nails, right? 9-inch nails. And then what we're going to do is value to update. We're going to turn this into NIN like this, right? So we're matching on this value over here, right? All conditions. So the band has to equal 9-inch nails. And then we're going to update that to NIN over here. Okay. So we're going to execute step. And then you can see it's been updated over here. Again, we're going to have to refresh this. And you can see now we have band NIN on that side of things. Awesome. And then lastly, what we can do is go over here and get rows. And this is important. Like you'll see the tool a little bit later, but this is gonna be important like when we're working on with an AI agent, right? Or in some sort of workflow. And again, we're gonna cover a lot in the video, like we're only on example 2. And what we're gonna do is just get rows, row, get, concert. There's a few things that are interesting on here, right? You could filter based off of a condition, right? Or you can also return all, or you can set a limit on here. Limits is very popular when you're writing SQL queries, right? Some IDEs will do a default, I think like limit of 10 or limit of 100. This defaults at a limit 50, or you can do return all on that side of things. You can filter on this condition, right? So date seen, like I only want to see bands populate here that I saw in 2025. Now, if we go back over here, right, I put in 2 concerts. I had 9-inch nails in the smile. The smile was in 2023. 9-inch nails was in 2025. So I only want to see 9-inch nails in over here, and you can see 9-inch nails, right? If I put 2021 over here, both will show, right? So the smile as well as 9-inch nails. So, you can add in some filtering over here on this side of things. Again, you could filter in any N in general, right? Like you have the filter over here, which you could filter. And you could always just go from here and say, hey, date scene. We're going to go over here, date time. And we're going to say is after or equal to, and then we'll go over here I meant to go to January. Okay. Anything greater than there, right? And you see only one item shows, or again, you could just filter in the get rows. And I find it probably easier to filter and get rows unless you have a lot of complicated logic and it just makes sense to throw this in over here. But again, 2 ways that you could do it. I'm just going to delete this filter. But yeah, those are the 4 operations that you're going to mostly use on here. I know there's others, but I wouldn't really worry about those as of yet. Just focus on these. Kind of where I hope this goes towards in the future. I know I mentioned at the very end, but one thing that would be really nice is if we could write SQL queries in over here. NAN already has the capability to write SQL queries, right? It's in the merge node. I covered that in my merge video, which it's going to be after this. I recorded it like a week ago, but I really, really wish there was an option to write SQL queries. In addition, right, you can't create a brand new data table, right? To create it, you're going to have to go over here or just go in the node and create it. There's not an option to create it in a workflow, which I think it'll come in the future, but I wish that came in the initial version. In addition, there's no triggers for this right now. If we go over here and again, data table, you can see everything that's over here. There's no trigger. We only have actions on here, which I just call regular nodes. But man, there's a lot that you could do if there's triggers on this side of things. Again, probably future development on this side of things. It's cool that they just added it in. And again, I'm going to show you a lot more examples. But in the future, I think my biggest ask would be definitely SQL queries, because if you've worked with data tables in general, you can know that there is a lot of SQL that could be created, right? A lot of filtering and different things like that. It'd be kind of cool on that side of things. But yeah, so there's that. So cool. We're going to jump into our next example. And I know technically we could have 2 tables over here, and I didn't even think about this as an example,
But you could technically join two tables with the merge, which again, I did my merge video. Maybe we'll do this here at the very end, but you could join tables together on a merge, and there is SQL available out over there. I don't know. Either way, I wish SQL was available for us. Cool. What we're going to do next is grab data from Sheets and then store it in NAN. So let's make sure we do that. So what we're going to do is just grab data from a concert spreadsheet I've been using in a few other videos. So I know it says split out node. I initially made this spreadsheet for the split out node, but I find it helpful for some other videos. So essentially what I have is a band, some songs for a band, the genre, and if I've seen them live or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this spreadsheet, right? We're going to filter for bands that I've seen live, and then we're just going to add it in over here on this side of things, right? So first thing what we're going to do is go over here and we're going to just do our Google Sheet. So what we're going to do is just set up your sheet, right? Grab your specific document that you want, grab the sheet number that you want or sheet name. I don't have any filters on here. I'm just going to filter next. So next what I have is I filtered the scene live. So just drag and drop this over here equal to yes, right? And you can see that this kept 9 items where 1 was disregarded. I never saw this band live. Cool. And then what we're going to do now is insert this into the database. So we're going to do row insert, right? And I already showed you this values insert JSON band, right? So I'm going to go over here, execute step. And now we have inserted all this data in over here. If we go back into the data table, you'll see we have all this over here. Now, I have 9 Inch Nails here twice because, I changed the abbreviation over here. So I'm just going to delete that really quick. But yeah, so we're down over here on that side of things. And also one thing to note, when I deleted that ID, you can see not everything shifted, right? We still have 1 through 11. We just removed that ID of 3. So if you expected this to update, it's not going to, right? It's going to stay in over here. And if I create a new row, it starts with 12, right? So I'm just going to delete that for you guys over here and just show you that this is still working, right? We just removed number 3 on that side of things. But that's how you can grab data from Sheets, right? The other thing which I was talking about earlier is like, hey, it's nice that we have data specifically here natively in NAN, but what if we want to keep a copy in Google Sheets, right? So what I would recommend that you guys do is set up a schedule trigger, right? And maybe this updates at 2 a.m. in the morning or 3 a.m. in the morning, right? And there's a lot that you could set, right? You can see days, trigger it at a specific hour, or if you really want to go a little bit more complicated, you can set up a cron job over here. I covered a little bit in my triggers video, but regardless, you can set up a trigger on here. I'm just going to set this manual for now, or you can set up both the manual as well as a schedule trigger, right? Make this into a workflow. But yeah, so what we're going to do on here, we're just going to do the manual, right? And what we're going to do is just get everything from this concerts, right? There's no conditions. I just want to return it all. You can see execute step, right? We have the 10 items over here. And then we just want to append or update rows in the sheet. Now, this is the same exact data already, minus, I've changed 9 Inch Nails to NIN. But yeah, so essentially just go in over here, right? Choose the value to send the match on, which Google Sheets is going to be a little bit different. So find your primary key. Like none of these bands are going to repeat on this side of things. Hypothetically, I could watch a band multiple times and I have, but we'll just assume that the band's the primary key on this side of things. So just drag and drop. That's how you're going to match it over. Then you can update it across the board, right? So if the data is not there, it's appended. If it is here and it's changed, that is updated. So you can append or update row in Sheet. I use this a lot. But yeah, so you have that option. So ideally, right, you can grab your data from Google Sheets and then you can set up, a scheduled trigger or a manual trigger, grab the data internally on NAN and then send it back into Google Sheets. And I know I'm only showing Google Sheets here, right? Again, you could use Supabase, you could use whatever you want, right? Airtable. But I'm just showing you guys in that capacity, right? Grabbing it and then just sending this back when we've worked on it within NAN. Cool. So let's keep moving forward now. That was example 4. Example 5 is like just a basic scraper. So in the past with like something like Apify, we used to have to specifically go and save this to Google Sheets, right? And just now this example is just going to show you like we can do a form submission over here and then we can save the data in another data table. So what I have over here is I have a new table called Instagram followers. So I just grabbed not ultra marathoner, but a marathoner, Eliud Kipchoge, one of the greatest runners of all time. And he's in over here. We scraped his Instagram followers. So what we're going to do is grab a cool. So let's grab Jim Walmsley, right? Considered one of the greatest ultra marathon runners. Did the Olympic trials a while ago as well and did pretty well for the marathon. Again, ultra runners and marathon runners are two completely different types of runners, which seems odd to a lot of people, but that's just generally what it is. But let's scrape his followers. Now, obviously I could just grab it, say 273,000, but when you do this in bulk and you have a lot of names to do, it's easier to run a scraper, right? So what we have over here is just a basic form submission, right? This is just on the testing side. It's not in production right now. And I'll just execute the step. So we're going to go unpin and test it, right? Let's add an Instagram URL of Walmsley. And then what we have over here is this Apify actor. I'm going to unpin this data. So what I'm doing is specifically looking at this actor, which grabs Instagram followers, just to show you guys what this looks like over here. I'll let this load. Instagram profile scraper. What I like doing with the Apify node is just grabbing the default JSON initially, right? And you can see usernames, and this was just for me testing, but grabbing that and then populating it in over here so you can see usernames. Again, drag and drop the URL over here on this side of things, put in the actor. Sometimes one of the toughest parts is finding an actor that works for your specific need, right? So this one is great because it just grabs me the followers. Again, this isn't a full video on Apify, but just to show you, we can send Apify results now into the native data tables, right? So I'm gonna go over here and execute step. This is gonna run the actor, which is the scraper, and then get the data set, which is the results from the scraper. So you can see this is executing node. It'll probably take anywhere from like a minute or so. There we go, even faster just because it's one. And you can see we have all this data for Jim over here. We're not gonna use it all, right? We're just gonna keep this super basic. What we're gonna do is we're gonna insert in a new row. So we're gonna grab the username, we're gonna grab the URL, we're gonna grab the followers and following. I'm gonna click execute step. And now all of this is here natively in NAN, right? You didn't have to save this into Airtable. You didn't have to save this into spreadsheets, right? This is directly in NAN. We have Jim Walmsley over here with followers, following, and all this information, right? And again, there's a lot that we could grab from Apify. But yeah, so something like that. And if you do want to learn a lot more about scraping social media, Apify is amazing on that side of things with some of their different actors. And I have full videos on that side of things as well. We're going to have other scraping videos here on the channel too. I've already done scraping videos on Python. That tends to work a little bit better when you go to like e-commerce sites or real estate sites. But I'm also going to be doing Firecrawl videos here in the near future, which integrate really nicely with MCP servers as well as specifically NAN. Again, it'll be coming in the future. Don't know exactly when. Cool. So what we're going to do is kind of pivot now. So what I've showed you so far are all these different types of nodes, kind of just some examples. But now what we're going to do is kind of work on a little bit of the AI side of things. And we're going to use an AI agent over here. And essentially what we're going to do is add in some of these different tools. Now, how we do that, we go over here to plus on here, we go to data, and what you see is the data table tool. And what you have to do if you want to go to your different operations, you're gonna have to click in over here and choose what you want. By default, it's gonna insert row and data table, right? But change this up, change the name, etc. I'm gonna keep this very basic for this video. And what we're going to do is just keep a chat message received. Again, this is a different trigger node. So I know we're covering a lot of different triggers. If this looks brand new to you guys, please watch the trigger video before like getting into data tables. But yeah, this will be way later in our playlist too. But what we have is a chat message received. It's going to go to this AI agent over here, right? The prompt is going to be whatever's in that chat input. Now I set up basic system message. If I was pushing this to production, this is not what I would said for my system message. Like this is not a good system message, but what I says, you are a helpful assistant that analyzes our table. Like that's not really great. Only source data from our data table. Again, not the best system message. I don't recommend that you push that into production. Like actually spend some time and write a good system message. But we have that over here. For the chat model, I just set up GPT-5 mini, right? I set up a simple memory on the side of things, context window length of 5, which I've done in other videos as well. And then what I did is I set up the 4 different tools over here. Well, I actually have 3 tools. I have get rows, update rows, insert rows. I actually didn't put delete over here. I didn't want the AI agent to accidentally delete something. Although if you want to, you can. I'd just be very careful on that side of things because of potential hallucinations. Maybe you need to be careful also with update, right? But regardless, right? I have this all over here and I just set up the calculator tool as well. So ideally you go in over here, right? I'm using this table for the Instagram followers that we just used, right? So select the data table and then values to insert. What I do is I just define automatically from the model. So just to get there, you click this like star icon and the model will automatically determine that, right? So that's going to be our example over here for insert. I know this is our updates. And again, this is kind of like get our rows, right? So this is gonna match any condition. We're going to send in conditions over here. I put limit 50. Obviously this table only has 2 rows, so that shouldn't really matter. But again, depends like the size of the table, right? For world scenarios, you're going to have a table much larger than 50, I would assume. But let's go over here and test it out. So we're going to open our chat over here and we can ask questions. So what I'm going to ask a question first is, who has more followers, Kipchoge or Walmsley? And I probably misspelled Walmsley. I think I actually spelled these right. All right, so let's see what happens on this side of things. So it's gonna go over here and grab the row and table as well. And the answer should be Kipchoge. I didn't actually prep all these. So you can see it says Kipchoge, right? It grabs the Instagram username, 2.9 million followers. Walmsley runs 273,000 followers. Kipchoge has, and it gave actually the difference as well, which is awesome, right? So again, like I would recommend that you start fine tuning this, right? Go in over here, set everything up properly. This is just like a super, super basic YouTube video, right? I would not recommend you push this through and say, hey, I have AI. Like actually spend time, build this out. But again, for the demo purpose of, we just went into this data table, right? We used an AI agent to go through, look at who had more followers and stuff on that side of things, right? Of 2 running legends. Okay, so we have the AI agent side of it. I also want to talk about like MCP servers and different things like that. So with MCP server trigger an AI agent over here as well. So essentially I have a full video talking about MCP because I think it's a pretty cool technology. But what I have over here, I'm not really going to run it, but I have this MCP client, right? Which acts as one tool instead of having all these over here. And what's really nice about this is this will allow people externally to work with your data that you have in NEN. So again, I'd be very careful of what you give people tool-wise on this side of things with MCP server trigger. You can say get rows in a data table and specify a table, right? And then someone externally can access your data in NEN, which is amazing, right? Again, we talked a little bit about the drawback on there of like accessing this data, but one way you could do that is, you know, through MCP server trigger. Again, also MCP server trigger kind of cleans up AI agents because you have all the different tools over here on that side of things. So all we're going to do on this side of things is just add an MCP client. So just go MCP over here, right? And then grab your client tool, add that in over here. And then what you're going to do is put in your endpoint. Now to get your endpoint over here, right? Just go on this side of things and grab your endpoint, right? So you can pass that in over there, set all of your tools. But again, like anyone can have access to this endpoint, right? And full video covering it on the channel if you want to learn more over there. But, you know, this is going to be one possible way that people can use the data that is in your NAN, right? Your native data tables through the MCP server trigger. You set this up specifically to get rows in a data table, and now people can access it. Cool. All right. So another use case that I saw and just thought of pretty early on, let me just throw this over here, is storing prompts, right? And we're going to just drag and drop this over here. So again, like I've just made a very quick table for prompts on here. Like I only filled out one row. I'm training for the Boston Marathon qualifying time. Can you give me a few weeks of speed workouts? Again, this is not a prompt I would use realistically, but I have the prompt over here. I have the prompt use, which I just called speed workout, right? And maybe you want to set versions for it, or you could just filter by ID. So just kind of this workflow, what we have over here is we get our rows from this table, right? So this would have all the output over here, right? We set a filter for like what type of prompt. I want to grab the speed workout prompt. So like, okay, I know I'm going to send a prompt to an AI agent. Like I want to use speed workout prompt. Okay. Next, this depends on like if you have multiple versions of a prompt or not. So like maybe for testing purposes and things like that or storage, okay, I want to use the most recent prompt for speed workouts, right? So we're going to sort these. I just set up a simple sort over here in descending order by the ID. So your latest ID would show up first. I'm going to have a video on sorting because I think it's important to know, but it's pretty quick to pick up, right? Descending largest number first, ascending smallest number first, right? And you can also do sorting by strings and things like that, but we're just going to sort by this unique identifier, the ID, right? And we're going to do a simple sort over here. Obviously one row, so not really much to sort, but initially imagine you had like 15 versions of the prompt, right? You want to have the most recent version. I put limit of 1 over here because we only want to have one prompt being sent over to our AI agent. And then all I did is drag and drop the prompt, right? So we can just drag and drop this prompt over here. You can expand on this prompt if you really want to, or hey, this is the prompt I want to use and just drag this. And what's really nice, right? If you use the same prompt over and over again, we have the framework to save this in a table internally in NAN, drag and drop the prompt and you're done. Like it's really, really awesome. And again, there's a lot to explore on this side of things, but just like early on, there's a lot of opportunities there. Cool. Kind of the last opportunity I'm thinking of initially, right, is logging. So like if you can set up an error trigger, and I would recommend you just build out a workflow for error triggers, because things are going to happen, things are going to bug out. But now you can store all your data in NAN. So just to show you, like I have this error handling, and again, I probably wouldn't put this in production for error handling. I would change this up. But I just grabbed a test live event over here. Right. And then I just edited the fields, which this is deactivated right now. So is this, but what I did is set the mapping. So I changed some of these over here just because the different data types, right? I just made all these strings. Otherwise they're arrays, but I just set these as strings, right? And then I just inserted the rows. So map each column manually, drag and drop these over here. And now we have our data for any errors stored internally here in NAN. And the other use case, which I was thinking about, is like joining tables. And, we could do this through the merge node, joining tables. Now I didn't prep this for the video. So this was just something I thought about when I was talking about the SQL side of things. But really, like, we go back over here, right? There's gonna be times we're gonna want to join tables together. And where do we have the get rows? Like, ideally what you would have is 2 different get rows. I think this is a good segue for my merge video, which it's probably going to come out after this, unless there's like new NAN update. But you could have like get row in one table, get rows in another data table, right? And then what you want to do is have this over here merge. And now you can merge these together. And there's so many different ways that you can merge stuff or even append stuff together, right? I didn't mean to put this into input 1. But this is where I was talking about with the SQL, right? You can actually write SQL queries and kind of join tables together, which is really, really powerful. There's a lot of default out of the box for combine, right? And again, it's gonna be like a 30+ minute video here on the channel talking about all the different types of merges and stuff like that. But I do see the use case where someone's gonna have 2 internal tables in NAN. They're gonna try to figure out how to merge these together. Just, use the merge node over here. But yeah, we have covered a ton in this video. I can't believe we're already at like 45 minutes in or something like that. So, just to reiterate, right, the main thing over here is, right, NAN states that this is faster than querying external tables, right? You can store your data natively, so there's less API calls. Right? you can save up to 500,000 rows, which, it's smaller data side of things. When you work with big data, some tables, million plus rows, but, that does a lot. Like you can do a ton for small businesses with up to 500,000 rows for a contact table for essentially, right? A lot of businesses you could store tables on here. Similar to this feature, similar to Make. And again, like for insert, delete, update rows, get rows, I'm going to find it pretty helpful. You can take things in Google Sheets, save it in over here, do all your work, and then re-upload it back into Sheets. Whether you want to do like a scheduled trigger or manually execute that whenever it's needed. Showed you the example of Appify. Showed you that there's also tools that you can set this up with instead of just Node. If you want people externally to use it, you can use the MCP server trigger. On that side of things, you can store prompts, which, there's going to be a lot of potential on here. This honestly could be a video in itself, right? Logging errors. I was going to make my logging error video, but now I'm glad I'm going to be making this here in the future. And lastly, if you have tables that you want to join, you can just use this merge node and join them together. Again, thanks you guys for watching this video. If you found it valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you need any help with your NAN workflows, I am taking on freelance customers. We'll catch you guys in another video.